Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never thought the day would come when I would have to leave my marriage behind. Yet here I was, standing in the quiet kitchen of our home, holding a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. My name is Elliot, I'm 38, and for the past 14 years, I had been married to Clara, a woman whose laughter once filled every corner of my life. Back then, when we first met, she was radiant, bright eyes, quick smile, and a way of turning every moment into something magical. I, on the other hand, was steady, calm, the sort of man who liked the predictable rhythm of life. I liked my routines. I liked knowing where I stood. Clara liked that about me. She said I was dependable, a solid rock in a world that spun too fast. Our early years were everything a storybook promises. Spontaneous road trips, late-night talks about nothing and everything, playful teasing, and the kind of intimacy that made the world disappear when it was just the two of us. I remember the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder during quiet evenings, the way she'd laugh at jokes that weren't funny, simply because I had said them. Those days felt eternal, and I believed they would last forever. But somewhere along the way, the laughter started to fade. Not in bursts of anger, not in fights or screaming matches, just slowly, quietly, as if it had evaporated into thin air. I first noticed it when she began spending longer hours at work, coming home tired, distracted, absorbed in her phone or computer. I tried to understand. I reassured myself that work stress, bills, and responsibilities can change people, temporarily dim their spark. But it wasn't temporary. The absence of warmth became the new normal. Kisses became brief pecks. Hugs were stiff, mechanical. Our conversations shrank to nothing more than logistics. Who would pick up groceries, which bills needed paying. For years, I tried to bring us back. I made dinners, I ran errands, I planned small surprises. Simple gestures meant to remind her that I cared. I thought effort alone could rekindle the connection we had lost. But effort, I slowly realized, was meaningless without reciprocity. I began to notice the subtle signs. A sigh when I approached, eyes rolling when I tried to talk, an almost imperceptible shift in the way she avoided touching me. I remember a Thursday evening vividly, our anniversary no less, when I had planned a quiet dinner at home. I decorated the table with candles and roses, soft music playing in the background. Clara walked in, glanced at the setup, and laughed. Not in delight, but in that dismissive way that made my chest tighten. "Elliot, really? You're so dramatic," she said, and left the room. That night, I sat alone at the table, staring at the empty chair across from me. I didn't yell, I didn't slam doors. I just realized that something fundamental had shifted, that I had been loving someone who was no longer present. And that realization was painful, deeper than any argument could have been. The breaking point came one rainy afternoon. Clara had called a meeting at home to talk, and I had prepared myself for anything. What I got was a message I'll never forget. She told me, flatly, that she no longer felt connected to me, that the marriage felt like a friendship that had grown stale, and that she needed space. Space that she emphasized would last indefinitely. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply said, "If that's what you need, I understand." And with that, I began the process of walking away, quietly, without spectacle. I moved out, rented a small apartment in town, and tried to rebuild the life I had put on pause for too many years. Some nights were hard. Some mornings lonelier than I could bear. But with every day, I felt lighter. My perspective shifted. I started noticing things about myself I had ignored for years. My hobbies, the friends I had neglected, even the little things like enjoying my morning coffee without waiting for someone else to be awake. Slowly, a version of me I hadn't seen in over a decade was returning. It was during this time that I met Lila, a colleague from a project I had volunteered for. She was clever, kind, and radiated a warmth that was different from what I had known before. She didn't fill the spaces in my life out of obligation or habit. She added joy where there had been emptiness. Lila became a part of my world not because I needed her to fix me, but because I chose to let someone in after learning to be whole alone. Yet, despite everything, there was one thought that never left my mind. Clara, the woman I had loved, the life I had tried to save, the home I had once shared. I didn't dwell on resentment. Instead, I reflected on the lessons she had unintentionally taught me. Love, I realized, isn't just about keeping someone near. It's about mutual presence, appreciation, and respect. And when those vanish, holding on only hurts both parties. Months passed. Life with Lila was gentle, unforced, and unexpectedly vibrant. I had learned how to laugh again, not just out of habit, but because I truly felt it. My mornings were no longer quiet and heavy. They were bright, filled with possibility. I'd never imagined that moving on could feel like reclaiming a part of myself I didn't even know was missing. Then one evening, a year after I had left Clara, I received an unexpected message. It wasn't from her, not directly, but from a mutual friend. Clara wants to meet. She's in town for a few days. My first instinct was to ignore it. I had no need to revisit the past, no reason to reopen wounds that had healed slowly, with patience and effort. But curiosity, that quiet human trait that refuses to be silenced, tugged at me. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe, neutral ground, where the air smelled of roasted coffee and quiet chatter. Clara arrived 15 minutes later, looking different. Not older, not worn, but subdued, almost fragile. The confident, dismissive woman I had known was gone. She ordered a tea and sat across from me, her hands clasped in front of her. I noticed the small hesitations in her movements, the way she avoided my eyes, and it struck me. She was no longer the woman I had loved, or perhaps the one I thought I had known. For the first few minutes, the conversation was awkward, polite, hesitant. Then she said it, almost as an admission. "Elliot, I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought leaving was the right choice." Her voice wavered, and I realized this was the moment she had been avoiding. This confrontation with herself and the consequences of her decisions. I listened quietly. I didn't interrupt, I didn't judge. I had no need to. Her words were enough. She talked about the loneliness she hadn't expected, the emptiness that crept into her days, and the realization that in walking away from me, she had lost more than a husband. She had lost the steady, unwavering presence of someone who had loved her without conditions. I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Empathy, clarity, and, unexpectedly, peace. I didn't gloat. I didn't remind her of all the nights I had stayed up worrying about her, or the dinners I had made, or the vacations I had planned. I had lived through that part of our lives. It had shaped me, yes, but I had moved beyond resentment. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. "I see you've moved on. You're happy. You've become someone I can't recognize. And I can't help but wish I'd appreciated you when I had the chance." I nodded slowly. I had indeed moved on, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I had finally learned my own worth. "Clara," I said softly, "life doesn't stop for regret. We all have to keep moving forward." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. And then, she laughed. Genuine, not the dismissive kind, but soft, almost wistful. It was the same laugh I had fallen in love with years ago, but it belonged to someone I no longer knew, or perhaps someone I no longer needed to know. That laughter, carrying both sorrow and acknowledgement, made something inside me click. The finality of our past, the lessons learned, and the strength gained all came together in a quiet, unassuming moment. As we parted that day, I realized she had seen the man she lost. Not because I had changed for her, but because I had reclaimed myself. The life I had built without her was full, steady, and real. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't seeking revenge. I simply existed in a space of self-respect, clarity, and emotional freedom. Walking out of the cafe, I felt a sense of calm that I had never known while I was in the marriage. It wasn't about victory or loss. It was about understanding that love, respect, and loyalty are most valuable when they are shared willingly, not extracted through expectation. Clara's laughter, her words, even her presence that day, were merely reminders of what had been and what had been lost by choice, not chance. Months later, I would occasionally reflect on that meeting. It became a story I told myself quietly, a lesson in human behavior, love, and the consequences of neglect. I learned that walking away doesn't make you weak. Staying in something hollow makes you small. And sometimes, the person who laughs last isn't the one who won, but the one who finally sees the truth clearly and walks forward, unburdened. Lila and I continued our journey together, built on honesty, laughter, and shared respect. Clara became a memory, an important one, but a memory nonetheless. And every once in a while, when I caught a glimpse of her from afar or heard her name mentioned, I would smile quietly, not from malice, not from pride, but from the peace that comes from knowing I had lived, I had grown, and I had won something far greater than any argument, any moment of rejection, or any failed expectation. I had won myself. In the end, that is the story of the man she lost. Not a tale of revenge, but a tale of reclaiming life, dignity, and love on one's own terms. And sometimes that is more powerful than anything else in the world.